Today is Tuesday, March the 8th. I'm reminded, not February the 8th, but today is Tuesday, March the 8th, 2016. It is the 10 o'clock hour. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte and the governing body of all other special assessment and taxing districts for which said board so acts is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. We're going to start off with a moment of reflection. So if you'll take a few seconds to get your thoughts in order. And now if you'll stand, and Supervisor Finnegan will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction of new employees. Do we have any? No new employees. Any actions from closed session, Council? Thank you. At this time, I would request any deletions, corrections, or additions from more board members. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Are there any such items? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to brief reports or announcements from supervisors. We'll start with Supervisor Gitlin.
Thank you, Chair. Another busy couple of weeks. First, the Redwood Coast Transit Authority. We met in special meeting last Friday, and awarded Heron/Transformative Mass Transit Planning, also known as TMTP Consultants, which is headed by Mr. Joe Rye, the position of General Manager. Effective date will be July 1st, or possibly sooner. Angela and I joined hundreds of other people at the fairground Saturday evening in support of raising funds for the crabbers who have been devastated economically this season. The crowd was enormous, and when we got there, we were told that there were no tickets left, and that turned out to be incorrect information, but we made a contribution and left at this time. But I'm understanding there were over 500 people there. I don't know if everyone ate, but I heard it was a great event and raised about $15,000 or $16,000 for the crabbers who've been devastated this season. The Crescent City Del Norte County Chamber of Commerce met its monthly meeting. There were three different presentations. National and State Parks announced its intention to move its downtown location to Hiuchi during the fall-winter off-season. I have some mixed feelings on this issue, and I would just remind that both the city and Hiuchi Visitor Center would be open during our peak summer months, but my concern has to do with the vacating of the downtown facility and what it would do to Crescent City off the very visible and highly traveled 101 as compared to the less busy 199. So it's my hope that the National State Parks will strongly vet this decision before any decision is made. And a second presentation was delivered by the National Human Traffic Resource Center, and the Chamber Board listened to a report on the current Del Norte County Capitol window display. That's when you go to the Capitol there, they have all these county displays, and ours is probably in need of some improvement and updating. So we heard a report that there are funds being sought to update that display. The discussion will be continued on that subject at our Visitors Bureau this afternoon at the Chamber office. Handles some constituent complaints, one in particular, and several of them from this area, regarding a mobile home park in my district. The concerns have been forwarded to Housing and Community Development, which oversees all mobile home operations and oversees everything having to do with mobile home or trailers or what have you, and that was been referred to them. Department of Health and Human Services conducted its foster care home recruitment and retention group meeting. The number of foster families is desperately in need of being increased to serve the needs of this vulnerable population, our children. The meeting was an opportunity to exchange ideas on how we can increase the number of families who will serve those in youth, and I actually had suggested that we do an outreach to our seniors population, which is a very growing, dynamic population of those who wish to help our kids in Del Norte County. Mental Health Board met last Wednesday for its monthly meeting and discussed was the Mental Health Services Act and its meeting, which will be a stakeholders group meeting to be held March 30th at the Veterans Hall on 8th Street. So I encourage you, if you have some issues wanting to know about what's going on with help being offered to those in need of mental health, to please mark that on your calendar. I don't have the time right in front of me, but I'll get that or call my office. It'll be Wednesday, March 30th. Among the subjects discussed was how to best spend the at least $400,000, and from what I understand, possibly more in state funding to address housing needs for the mentally ill. It's a big problem. We don't have enough housing, and how we can best serve that. Pleased to announce we have a full-time, almost a full-time psychiatrist working in Del Norte County now. Dr. Tomar is scheduled to work a 4-day week starting by the end of this month. Attended the bi-monthly meeting of the area operations organized by the Office of Emergency Service. This is a meeting of operational area agencies to meet and to plan for and respond to disasters in Del Norte County. In place is, in fact, and I hope that we'll begin to talk about this, we already have an agreement in place, mutual aid agreement, with other law enforcement agencies, fire, school districts, any other agencies where we are sharing services should a catastrophe condition befall Del Norte County. I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony of the Career Tech Center on Del Norte High School's campus, another step in training our youth in technical and vocational employment. Last Chance Grade Advisory Committee met to discuss the recent slippage in the retaining wall and how the committee will work to hasten the projected replacement of this doomed highway prior to the 2031-2039 scheduled date. I want to remind everybody that there will be a town hall meeting sponsored and hosted by Caltrans Wednesday, March 23rd at 5:30. That will be at the fairgrounds, and Thursday, March 24th at 3:30 at the Yurok Tribal Office in Klamath. There's also another meeting in Eureka, March 22nd. We'll have more discussion on this subject toward the end of our agenda. Our Take a Bite Out of Blight program will be organizing its 18th cleanup. I'd like to personally thank the Wild Rivers Foundation for donation of its large cubic yard dumpster for purposes of ridding some of our waste here in this community. So we'll be organizing volunteers for this scheduled April cleanup. Haven't announced the site as yet, but I would encourage volunteers who wish to come out and help to please give me a call at the Board of Supervisors offices. In the next few days, regrettably, I must tell you that many of you Del Norte County property owners will be receiving another $150 CAL FIRE tax bill from the State Department of Equalization. Our board is on record opposing this unfair tax back in September of 2012. As the public is very much aware, all taxes in the state must surpass the 2/3 threshold in both the Assembly and the Senate, and that has not happened. And so that is something that I think we need to look at in a clear area. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask, as a matter of courtesy, I ask you to direct our staff to provide the one-page protest form from our form, the Board of Supervisors office upstairs, for those who are unable to access the internet to get this form while the matter, as you know, is being litigated. And that is my report this morning.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Attended with Supervisor Hemmingson a 2x2 with Redwood National State Parks. Some of the issues that were discussed, as Supervisor Gitman highlighted, was specifically the relocation for a period of time, the Redwood National and State Parks Visitor Center downtown to Hiuchi. It's been a great concern. Supervisor Hemmingson invited representatives from the city council and their interim manager to the meeting that we had. And it was explained by Parks that it's not the intent for them to close that visitor center. And it's their experience based on past travel statistics and conversations with travelers that they generally feel when people arrive in downtown Crescent City, they tend not to go backwards. If they're traveling from the north heading south, they tend not to move backwards in the sense that they're missing us. They're continuing to travel south into Humboldt County to visit the Redwoods. So their idea and their intent is to try to keep them here by relocating the visitor center to a facility that has a wider array of services, and more importantly, could stay and attract visitors to our area and keep them in Del Norte County. And as offered up by Steve Prokoff, Superintendent of Natural Parks, this will be a one-year trial to see generally how it works out and to see if visitors will stay here in Del Norte County and generally not move south into Humboldt County if they have already driven through Redwood National Park located in Del Norte. Also, a conversation specific with ATV trespass in the Tolowa Dunes State Park area. A considerable amount of traffic has been occurring out there, and I know Brett Silver with Superintendent with State Parks is addressing that issue. Touch base on a follow-up conversation with Representative Huffman, Scott Rasmussen recently, specific to tribal fee to trust issues. This was a follow-up conversation that CAO Serena and I had with Jared Huffman on his last visit. Also had a meeting with Colin Fisk for the Coalition for Responsible Transportation and Natalie Delap with Environmental Protection Information Center specific to Highway 199, 197. They continue to be fairly vocal about their opposition to 199, 197 and where the community stands with the construction and safety improvements to that highway, but they do want to see moving forward in the future, and I tend to agree with them, that more open conversation take place when we're planning goals for our community. And I say, well, we've got processes in place, and specifically with the Regional Transportation Plan moving forward for 2016, those are the type of processes where the community has an opportunity to express their interests specific to transportation goals, not only in the city and the county, but also on our state highways. We also had a conversation with new California USDA Director Janice Waddell, and this was specific to some issues involving Tri-Agency Economic Development Authority and getting ourselves out from underneath a few loans that were made and some of the debts that are occurring there. And the conversation went extremely well with USDA and their representatives, and hopefully we'll be reporting out on that this month. Addition, had some very long discussions, follow up to the California Fish and Game Commission, where Commissioner Hostler Carmerson requested both Supervisor Hemmingson and I to work closely with the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Yurok tribe in helping to come to some resolution on Blue Creek closure. As you may be aware from our last meeting, the commission reopened Blue Creek in the sense that they reopened it to a 500-foot closure above and below from the previous year's half-mile below, 500 foot above. In doing so, they've asked the tribe, the county, and Del Norte and the Fish and Wildlife Service to come together and create a study that would basically look at mortality in steelhead populations at the mouth of Blue Creek during this time period. The first meeting took place this last Friday, and I think we're well underway to determining what study would be most effective to see if there's actually mortality related from a catch and release fishery occurring there at the mouth of Blue Creek. Continued conversations on all the different drought emergency relief measures, both with the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Resources Board around SB 88, which is an emergency drought measure, and then also the Groundwater Act, which Randy Hooper will be discussing with us today at length, and I'm glad that'll be coming to our forefront today and hopefully a resolution today on those issues. And then, in addition, tomorrow night, Smith River Neighborhood Watch. I hope some of our residents in District 3 might be able to join us out there. It's my understanding that Greg Duncan will be addressing the Smith River Neighborhood Watch, specifically on issues around Sutter Coast, which I found very interesting to be for a neighborhood watch issue, but you'll be there tomorrow night at 6 o'clock in Smith River. And then I want to congratulate the Crescent City JCs for another terrific tournament. My son played this weekend for Crescent Elk. The teams did extremely well. Both Crescent Elk teams, or actually all three Crescent Elk teams, took consolation, and the Crescent Elk A's took second place in the tournament this weekend. It was incredible to watch, and congratulations to my son who took an all-tourney award for his participation. And it was great to see the kids out, and more importantly, it's great to see the restaurants, businesses, and hotels full in Del Norte County.
Thank you. Supervisor Finnegan.
Thank you, and congratulations to your son. Didn't know that. I also had a couple of meetings, not as many as I usually do because I was consumed with some family issues, but first started with an airport JPA meeting, which was a special meeting, to talk about what the actual plans were and the strategy to not diminish the aesthetic appeal nor the structure of the new terminal, but how to raise those funds for the 5% match, as well as those funds that are not eligible for any of the match. Happy to say that all the partners of the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority, and I'm talking about the tribes, Curry County, Del Norte County, City of Crescent City, Brookings, all of us, still very, very committed, are not going to compromise on the project, and do have some strategies for raising the additional funds, and I think Supervisor Hemmingson is going to report out on that a little bit more. I had to leave, took care of some family business, had to bury my father, take care of his estate, deal with family, which is always, some of the living family is harder to deal with than the ones that passed. But anyway, all turned out well, and I want to thank everybody for all the well wishes and the condolences. Deeply heartfelt. Thank you very much. Had another airport JPA meeting where we let out about 7 contracts for the request for qualifications regarding everything from engineering to the mitigation to the geotechnical to the structural plans for the new terminal. So very quietly, within about a 10-minute period, we have the ball rolling downhill very fast towards the new terminal. Had a luncheon with a couple of individuals regarding children's issues in the community, knowing full well that we established the children's budget this year along with the Children's Bill of Rights, established the baseline, and now what do we do going forward? How do we turn that curve, so to speak, to take the money that we're spending on recidivism, or reducing recidivism rather, and on prevention, on intervention, and move it way upstream to early childhood development and family support for at the earliest stages. And so this is something we're going to be tracking. Went to the Fisherman's Benefit Dinner. Phenomenal, the way the community turns out with this. And then had conversations, your typical conversations with constituents. A lot of it, you know, it's great when you get to work on positive stuff. It is necessary but time-consuming when you have to constantly deal with other people's political rhetoric and rumors regarding issues. Had a nice talk with Joy Keller-Weidman, who is the moderator for the Last Chance Grade Stakeholders Committee, the official one that is being hosted by the congressman and appointed by the congressman. Also had talks with Caltrans. It is that group that decided to have Caltrans do the public hearings that you're going to have in 2 weeks, one in Eureka, one here in Crescent City at the fairgrounds, and then one midday or about 3:30 in the afternoon down in Klamath, 3 days running. So hopefully you're able to sift through the facts and the innuendos and understand that unless somebody out there has a checkbook that has about $1 billion in it, let's follow the process. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Well, as Supervisor Finnegan said, we did have a special Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting that I think went very well. You know, David has, or Supervisor Finnegan has been steadfast in holding the line on what he thinks we need to have out there, and I somewhat agree with him. So I think we're moving along very well. Van Eer has done an excellent job of looking at costs and trying to reduce those costs as much as possible while still keeping the facility whole. And I have to commend them on that. They did just an outstanding job. We had a fairly lengthy meeting on all the options of financing, what it is that we're going to have to come up with. And then, of course, we look forward to seeing the bids come in to see if that's going to hold true. As Supervisor Howard said, we had a Redwood National and State Parks 2x2, where I did invite the city to come along. The parks had decided to do this little change of moving the visitor center, and they're only moving it for the off-season, not for the busy time of the year, but they neglected to include the city in their discussions, and I think that was a bad decision on their part, and they agreed, and hopefully we'll keep them more informed as things go on. The CAO and deputy or assistant county council and assistant CAO and I went to the second marijuana summit to discuss the possible legislation that's going to be coming down legalizing recreational marijuana. It's kind of a difficult subject to get through. Humboldt County has already gotten their ordinance in place and believe it's now in litigation. That's just a rumor. I don't know that for a fact, but it seems as though maybe it's a good thing that we don't come out with ours until hopefully the last one is written, so we can eliminate all those issues that everybody else is having. While on the way down, I tried to participate in a Dungeness Crab Task Force Executive Committee meeting conference call. It was very difficult. Reception is not good all the way down, so it was kind of an in and out thing. We also met with a possible contractor to do our human resources and maybe some employee negotiations at dinner prior to the summit. So that was it's good to put all these, try to get all these things done, or as much as you can get done while we're on the road like that. Also got a chance to speak with Senator McGuire. It's always good to be able to discuss for a brief period of time, or just keep him abreast of things that are going on in Del Norte County. Did have a short discussion with him about SB 747, which is going to help our rural airports if it gets any traction, and we'll hope that it does. And I did participate, or I went to the crab dinner, as the other supervisors discussed earlier. It was extremely full, long lines, but they did have a little bounce house for my grandkids, so it kept them busy while we were waiting in line. So it was a great thing. They raised a lot of money for a very good cause, and very happy to see that go on. That's about it for me. And now we will move on to Jay, who's going to give us a brief report on what's going on.
The last couple of weeks have been consumed with a lot of different involvement in human resources. Had a meeting with the city manager regarding agreements that are of interest to both the county and the city. Had a conference call with Senator McGuire over the potential for a resources position in Del Norte County. Had a meeting with the USDA Wildlife Services branch over basically discussing our agreement that we have with them and the trigger, which is depredation permits through the U.S. or the State Department of Fish and Wildlife. So I got to meet the trapper on that one there, as well as his regional guy, and had also a conference call with USDA over tri-agency with Supervisor Howard. Had a meeting with regarding the tsunami playbook, so that was an OES related meeting. basically for those types of potential tsunamis that are smaller, not the most devastating, and how we'll react to those. It's good to know that we're one of the most ready of all of the coastal counties. Attended the marijuana summit. We discussed both recreational as well as medical marijuana, where people are with their ordinances on medical marijuana, and then the potential for these initiatives coming forward. And there's a lot of competition over the different initiatives and who has the most money. That's kind of disappointing, but that's the nature of initiatives in California for sure. And I've been working also on getting the mid-year budget numbers together, which I'll kind of touch on here in a little bit.
And you were on TV?
Yes.
You guess you were?
I got interviewed, yes, over the emergency declaration for Pebble Beach and Camp Memorial Park.
And I actually happened to catch that. I don't know why it was on the different news than I normally watch, but I thought, I recognize that face.
Well, I'm sure everybody will be happy that I'm not on TV very often. Face made for radio.
Yeah, no disagreement. I would like to agree with our CAO. We don't want to have any. Okay, so we're going to move on to 1025 timed item, which is public comment, and I think Kylie has someone on the list that we'll start with, and then we'll open it up for anybody else that wants comment. Kylie?
Patricia Tizo.
Good morning.
Do I give these two? I'm here about a blight property that is out at Pacific Shores. It is 107-071-17. And I thought it would be as easy as just organizing trucks and people and volunteers to just go in there and clean it up. But I started in Dave Mason's office and was told it's private property and you can't go clean it up. So undaunted, I got a name. I went to the tax office. They said the taxes have not been paid for 6 years. I've got all kinds of phone numbers and emails of people, which I followed up on, and have not gotten any satisfactory answers, so that's why I'm here. I would like to organize a cleanup of that place right there, and I'd like to know who owns it and why they are not being made responsible. And if they can't or won't clean it up, why can't the community clean it up? Is that how you do it?
That's certainly how you make public comment. We don't normally get into engaging to answering questions or doing that. We'll take it under advisement. We'll give it to staff. They'll look over it. I can't imagine that Dave Mason, we have cleaned up public or private properties before. I don't know what the issue is on that, but we will have staff take it.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of clarification? Because I'm a little confused on it, because this land is in transition, is it not? It's being used as bargaining chips for future land mitigation. So is this in the property of Del Norte County, or is it in the process of being transferred over? So maybe we could get an update from our CAO and legal counsel as to what the status is today on these parcels in question. I don't know the numbers, but I don't know what we're at today.
I have a little thing on there with the parcel number.
Yeah, I don't know which property it is. I don't know if it's one of those properties that we're using for mitigation.
Well, it's the first one that I came to. I thought I would start small because that place is just trash from here to eternity.
Yep.
So the first one that I came to, I thought, gung-ho, let's do it. And it's been roadblock, 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 roadblock. So, I don't know. I would just like to get permission to organize a cleanup. That's all.
Yeah, well, I don't know who the ownership of the property is. You know, there's a lot of things I don't know. Like, we'd have to get staff to take a look at it, find out what it is and where we can go. But I think you started in the right place with Dave Mason. He doesn't usually just drop the ball on these things, so I'm a little bit confused.
Well, he said that his budget is X amount of dollars. And for him to go in there and try and remove the trailers, which each one cost X amount of dollars, it would use up his whole budget for a year. But I also spoke with the transfer station and Ted Ward at the dumpster place, and they're willing to do free dump runs for cleaning up out there. And so I wasn't asking him to give money. I was
Right.
just asking, can we?
Okay.
So,
Well, we'll have staff take a look at it, we'll see what we can do, we'll get back to you. Is your contact information?
I can give it to somebody.
Yeah, either give it to the CAO or the clerk, and somebody will get back to you, and we'll let you know what happens.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other public comment? Okay. Seeing no other public comment, we will move on to our next timed item, which is to review, identify options for the formation of an airport land use commission. Randy?
Morning, Chair Hemmingson and members of the board. As you may recall, in 2014, we applied for a grant from the State Department of Transportation. This was for the development of a countywide airport land use compatibility plan, or an ALUCP, for our 3 public use airports. As you know, the county owns 3 public use airports. These would be McNamara Field here in Crescent City, Ward Field in Gasky, as well as Macbeth Field in the Klamath Glen. Based on the grant application, we were awarded $135,000. And again, this was specifically for the purposes of the development of our ALUCP. These were funds awarded by the State Transportation Commission under the Division of Aeronautics grant program. Excuse me. Shortly after being notified of the award, we posted an RFP. The RFP was essentially inviting qualified airport planning consultants to submit bids on this ALUCP project. As a result of the RFP process, Kaufman Consultants was identified as the lowest responsive bidder, and last year, your board directed us to enter into an agreement with Kaufman to assist in the development of our ALUCP. Notably, the agreement includes a provision which includes for the assistance in the formation of an airport land use commission, which is required by state law. Kaufman Consultants has been conducting airport planning, offering airport planning services since 1979, and airport planning is all they do. They're very specialized and they're very good at what they do. They come to us very highly recommended from our contacts at the Division of Aeronautics, as well as some of the other planning agencies that we spoke to in California who they've done business with. So we're very pleased to have entered into an agreement with Kaufman. We have a representative here, Mr. Dave Fitz from Kaufman, who's going to talk to us a little bit about this Airport Land Use Commission formation process, as well as the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan in a little more detail, go over some of the different formation options, and be available for any technical questions you may have. We did meet with, we gave a presentation to the City Council last night to kind of go over some of the implications for the city on this. We received some good feedback and some good questions. We're definitely at a preliminary stage in the development of this plan, but it is a very important plan for the future growth of the community. As we all know, we've had some issues with compatibility over the last couple of years with encroachments in some of those clearance areas. We've had those issues in Gasky. We're going through some of those issues at Jack McNamara here in Crescent City now, and we recently even had some of these issues in Klamath. So compatibility is definitely a relevant issue. This is something we're mandated to do by the state under the State Aviation Act, or the State Aeronautics Act. And so again, we're very happy to be partnering with Kaufman Consultants on this project. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fitz, Dave Fitz from Kaufman, who has a short presentation for us, and then we'll be available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
I've got about 10 minutes worth of slides, and then we'll open it up for questions. Quickly, as Randy had mentioned, this is a state law. The California State Aeronautics Act established the basis for the Airport Land Use Commission, and the associated planning document that goes with it, the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. They also codified it in the Public Utilities Code 21670. So we've got a pretty firm foundation and guidance on how to put it together. The law is really intended, and I'm going to read this to you because it's very important, because there's parts of this that I think are very important. Obviously, it's to protect the health, safety, and welfare, and by encouraging orderly expansion of the airports and the adoption of land use measures that minimize exposure to excessive noise and safety hazards in and around public airports, to the extent that these areas are not already devoted to incompatible land uses. That last statement, I want to make sure that everyone understands that once this plan goes into place, it does not have an effect on existing land uses. And it's outside the fence, so anything that's going on inside an airport, that's really the realm of FAA and Caltrans and how an airport develops inside the fence. So this is really kind of the outside the fence type of a study. All right. There are two functions for an Airport Land Use Commission once it's established. The first one is to develop a plan. It's a 20-year look, a very forward-looking plan. And the other principal function is, once that plan's in place, is to review local agencies' development proposals and things of that nature, as well as what's going on at the airport, to make sure that that plan is up to date and doing what it needs to not only protect the future viability of the airport, but also the safety of the public that may live in the airport influence area. Now, there were the Public Utility Code specifies really 6 general land uses, or not land uses, excuse me, options for developing an airport land use compatibility plan. There's the straightforward Airport Land Use Commission, starting from scratch, if you will. There's designating a body, designating an agency. There's a couple of exemptions. Some of those are in the Public Utilities Code. San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Cruz, and Kern County all have exemptions put into place where they have, for example, San Diego has overall airport authority that manages all of their airports, including San Diego International Airport. So they have taken that on and established through the state legislature that protocol. There's also inter-county AOCs, and then obviously we have 2 unknowns, 2 counties that do not have airport land use commissions to date. We're hoping to take care of one of those on that list right now. But working back up, the inter-county ALUC, because there's not an airport that shares a county boundary, that option really isn't viable for Del Norte. The exemptions, obviously going through the state legislature to establish it, really isn't a viable option. Designating an agency is a little tricky, because when you designate an agency, obviously the county and then the city of Crescent City, because Crescent City doesn't have an airport within their municipal boundaries, really doesn't make much sense for an option. So now we're really up to designating a body or the Airport Land Use Commission as a standalone. The standalone option, again, is a little more work. It requires 2 representatives from the county, 2 representatives from the city, and 2 aviation experts. And then those 6 get together and they vote an at-large person. So the problem with the standalone one is the economics. You're establishing a completely new commission. That and the city of Crescent City would have a fairly large presence on a commission that really doesn't own or operate an airport. So that really kind of leaves us with the designated body. So we have a couple of options. We've, the report that we prepared for staff, the Airport Land Use Commission, the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority, the Del Norte Board of Supervisors, and the local Transportation Commission are all options that are available of existing commissions that could be used, with the exception of the Airport Authority. There is a stipulation in the public utility codes that at least 2 members have to have aviation experience or expertise on that commission. So the airport authority is the only one that we wouldn't have to supplement. However, this is a planning function. It's a land use planning function, and there needs to be some expertise in that area specifically, in addition to the aviation. So the County Planning Commission seems to be the most viable with the supplement of adding 2 individuals with aviation experience. Really, when you look at their role in reviewing local agency actions with respect to development, that is really the best option at this point. Now, what are next? The next step after designating a body is really to adopt a resolution establishing that role with that particular commission. The resolution will need to specify that 2 individuals with aviation experience or expertise be added to it, just for those moments when you are acting as the Airport Land Use Commission. Then the Airport Land Use Commission will have to assemble and develop some, not only establish officers and duties and things of that nature, but then start the process of developing an airport land use compatibility plan. So in a nutshell, that is the quick and down and dirty, and we're here for some questions if you have any.
Okay. David?
To clarify, the airport land use planning is going to be dealing with lands outside the fence of the proper airports, correct?
That's correct.
Or airport proper.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Supervisor Gittler.
Thank you, Mr. Fitz. By the way, Del Norte. No, we don't do the Spanish way. Okay, Del Norte, thank you. I did that mistake and got slapped in the face a long time ago.
Apologize.
Anyway, having said that, I just would like to say that the Planning Commission seems a very viable option as per your recommendation, as in doing the designated body option. However, our Planning Commission meets once a month. So for meetings that are called for this ALUC meeting, what would we be doing? Meeting once a month and adding 2 members, expertise members? I'm not quite sure of the logistics, or is it a separate standalone meeting? Randy, maybe you can address that.
So the recommendation from staff would be that we essentially use the Planning Commission as a body to serve as the ALUC when necessary. So whenever projects arise that require ALUC action, we would bring those 2 members in. We don't frankly anticipate the ALUC convening all that frequently. It'd be kind of like what you guys do as the Board of Equalization, essentially. You serve as the Board of Supervisors, you put on a different hat and vote and take action as an ALUC, or they would be taking action as an ALUC whenever that need arises. Most of the work would be on the front end, getting it through the approval process, passing the resolution, developing the ordinances. Once it gets through that process, it would be triggered on an as-needed basis, and again, frankly, we don't anticipate that would be very frequently.
Supervisor Howard, anything? So is this something that you're going to put together then, Randy, this plan?
Yeah,
and then you'll bring it, and
yes.
then you would bring it to this commission?
Yeah, so the grant that we received from the state is $135,000 again. This is about a $160,000 project in total, and the result of the planning process will be the development of the ALUC, or the ALUCP, excuse me. The ALUCP will have to go through all the typical approval processes before it becomes official, and then as a result of that, we will have to review existing ordinances. For example, there's an ordinance in the zoning chapter specific to airports, and that'll have to be updated. So that'll be coming back before the commission and the board.
Okay, great. Sounds like a plan. So you're just looking for direction? We don't need a motion or anything? You just want
No,
direction?
the recommendation from staff is that we proceed with the Planning Commission being the designated body and proceeding with the steps to add those 2 additional members. So that'll initiate some outreach with, for example, the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority to probably identify those 2 additional members with aviation expertise. So we are asking for a direction on this one.
Okay.
Move to direct the recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment? Anybody like to?
Terry McNamara, and I'm listening to this outside the fence, and I am right outside the fence. And I'm really a little bit confused on this whole thing. What do you mean by legislating or regulating or telling me what I can do with my property outside the fence? Don't take that negative, please. I just need to understand what you're talking about. What are you telling me I'm going to do with my property?
Well, I don't really want you to, but I am going to let you.
Well, again, the airport land use compatibility plan does not have an impact on existing land uses. So if there's something there that is already existing, it will not have an effect. However, if a piece of property wants to develop something, and depending on where it is, we haven't established any the zones around it that for safety and airspace protection and noise exposure. But depending on where it would fall, there may be a disclosure statement notifying future land use owners that they're near an airport, or they may have excessive noise. There may be guidelines that say you can't put a shopping mall or a sports complex because the risk is higher of an accident in that particular area. So it really depends on where they're at and what they plan on doing with the property.
But just to reiterate, it does not affect current land uses that are happening there right
That's
now.
correct, and that's codified in Public Utilities Code.
Okay. Is that good, Terry? Well, you'll have to see what they come up with in the plan. You'll get an opportunity probably to speak on that.
I think if you were to apply for a rezone that would allow for multifamily housing or high-density residential out of ag or out of I think there's a forest out there with some RCA zoning, then you would have an issue with this planning commission. And that's where the recommendation, the debate would take place. Existing land use, you're good.
I'll take a stab at it. So I think to Mr. McNamara's point, I mean, there are a lot of regulations that come into effect that tell you what you can and can't do with your property. Unfortunately, when the California legislature enacted the Aviation Act or the Aeronautics Act, this is one of those additional things that cities and counties are required to mandate. I would point out that there's a consistency determination that'll have to take place as part of the adoption of the airport land use compatibility plan, and that'll have to do with consistency between the general plan and the zoning. It could be a situation of the tail wagging the dog, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it. We also have, as we all know, the privilege of working with the Coastal Commission and getting this program enacted. And so we are definitely in the preliminary phases. There's going to be a lot of public participation and outreach through the process, and we hope to resolve all the concerns before we have a final product.
Great, thanks, Randy. Any other public comment? Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to our 10:45 timed item. We're going to get an update from Mitch Hanna from Sutter Coast Hospital. Thank you, Mr. Hanna, for coming.
Thank you for inviting me back. Mitch Hanna, CEO, Sutter Auburn Faith Hospital and Sutter Coast Hospital. I spoke before your body probably about 6 or 8 months ago and just wanted to come back and kind of give you an update, status report on what plans we have accomplished and what we hope to accomplish in the near term. First of all, there's been a lot of discussion both through the healthcare district and in the press about the lack of services, about patients being transferred out. I wanted to just share with you active physician recruitments that we have ongoing currently. Hematology, oncology, ENT, cardiology, general surgery, orthopedic surgery, pediatrics, OBGYN, urology, and family practice. And currently we actually are in the process of making offers to an OBGYN and to a general surgeon. So we hope to have them joining our community within the next, in the case of the OBGYN, within the next few months, because she is California licensed. That is taking a tremendous amount of time It's a challenge for all providers in California. It's about 6 to 8 months to get a California license from start to finish. And currently we have an offer out. We've had an offer out to an orthopedic surgeon since November. He still does not have his California licensure, so that's a big challenge for us. That's also a challenge, I might add, when we're using locums to, which are basically visiting physicians, to staff different services, as we frequently have to do, because if they are not California licensed, it's taking so long to get them licensed. We actually went live with our electronic health record. That system is Epic. That's the name of the system. It's regarded within the healthcare industry as the best electronic health record. We went live on March 5th, Saturday. So you may see a lot of unfamiliar faces in the community. We've been flying in about, well, for the past few months, about 10 to 12 people every week to help support the go live. And right now we've probably got about 35 to 40 people in the hospital who are not normally core staff to the hospital, helping to support that effort. I think that's actually been very helpful for our economy. When I flew in yesterday, I heard the Hertz agent telling them that she was out of cars because Sutter had already leased all the cars. So that will be ongoing probably for about the next month with that level of support team. We are planning to create a timeshare suite in Crescent City to basically help provide a venue for physicians, specialists essentially, who would like to provide services here but may not have the core population to have a full-time practice here. Recently in discussion with an orthopedic surgeon from Arcata who wants to come here for a week a month. If we are successful in recruiting an oncologist, one with whom I'm currently discussing the opportunity, has a practice in the Bay Area but would like to be here a couple of weeks a month, so we would need a setting for that. So timeshares are frequently used by hospitals for those types of specialties where you may not have a patient population that could support a full-time practice. Our Brookings Harbor Outpatient Imaging Center, I think I made reference to that last time we were here. We hope to have that completed by April 20th. We will have 4 modalities there: mammography, CT, ultrasound, and X-ray. And speaking of CT, our 128 slice CT, which is state-of-the-art technology in imaging, is being installed in the hospital, and we anticipate that we will have that completed by March 30th. Of course, again, we're at the mercy of the state regulators in terms of when they actually sign that off, but once it's installed, we will put in our request to have them come do a survey and sign that project off. And then, of course, our acute rehab unit. I don't know if any of you had a chance, whether it was through the chamber open house or otherwise, to visit that unit, but our 10-bed acute rehab unit opened on January 1st and is operational, and we're running an average daily census of 4, so better than we actually expected this early in the opening of the unit. Finally, on the horizon, I hope to be presenting a business plan to our board this week. We would like to be in construction and actually have it operationalized by year-end or first quarter of 2017, a dialysis center that will actually be owned and operated by Sanderlin Dialysis, but it will be built on our property, and we will enter into a land lease with them, and immediately adjacent to that will be an infusion center that will be owned and operated by the hospital. So that's what we've got on the horizon, and more to come, but there's only so many projects we can tackle at one time. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
It sounds like you got a lot of projects going on. Supervisors, David?
For clarification, you have a lot going on. What don't you have going on? I'm going to allow you to clarify that there is no current plan or application to downsize, and for at least today, tomorrow, and the next day, you've given that up.
There is no current plan to move to critical access designation, if that's what you're referring to.
That isn't what I'm referring to, and what I'm hearing is that you actually are moving towards expanding services.
Yes, although that's not inconsistent with critical access designation as well, but we have no plans to move to critical access at this point in time. Again, let me reiterate, my concern with proceeding to critical access is if we are successful in recruiting the physicians that I think this community actually can support, we don't want to be in a position where our bed capacity limits our ability to care for patients. Thank you.
Supervisor Gitlin.
Thank you, Mr. Han. I appreciate your coming here and updating. It's exciting news you're delivering to us, but I'd like to make some observations and then also to tell you that as an elected official, my goal is to see Del Norte County improve and expand its access to all affordable health care. I'm pleased that, and I don't think you addressed the issue of ownership, whether it will be transferred down to the Bay Area, but I'm pleased that you have, at this time, you've rescinded your application for critical access, but I do have some skepticism that this will rear its head again. So I read the newspaper and I saw the word hatred in there, and I would just like to make a suggestion to you that perhaps these words are not helpful, that perhaps concern or disappointed might be better choices, because I don't think anybody hates anybody here. I know the doctors don't hate Sutter, and Sutter I don't think hates the doctors. So I would like to see the hospital at this point become more forthright. The community expects the delivery of high-quality medical services, not more CAL or life flights. I think there's a 400% increase in over the last decade. Also, the issue of Dr. Mark Davis has been coming up to me. He's an opponent of regionalization and critical access. He, along with former doctor, Dr. Manfred Ritter, they took a position and they're no longer in our community. And these were very fine doctors. So that does continue to concern me. So the board has repeatedly and continually asked Sutter to release its financial records and meetings minutes. I am disappointed that we've not had a positive response to this. The Camden study, your very own supported Camden study said you would lose millions without critical access, yet there was a $10.8 million profit realized in 2014, and I'm understanding 2015 is a $3.1 million profit, plus there are profits that have been announced as $7 million over the years 2009 and 2010. So it's no wonder that I'm asking that your status as a nonprofit status be examined by our State Board of Equalization. I don't know if they're shared by my other members on this board, but I'm asking that question. So we would like those minutes, and we would like to note the financial conditions. So my questions are simple. I understand with Mad River Hospital, there's many of our patients who have private insurance are going down there because there's realizing a substantial savings and out-of-pocket costs. And I would like you to address that if you can this morning about is there an incentive? Are the prices much lower in Arcata at Mad River Hospital than they are here at Sutter Coast? And the second question is about the physician ER group, which has been designated as out-of-network for some local insurance plan. Again, it puts a burden on local residents who are forced to pay higher doctor fees for the emergency room. So I'd like you to tell our board if this ER physician group is in the network or out of the network, and what's the impact for our local Blue Cross and Blue Shield insurance plans.
Okay, well, you've asked or raised a lot of issues. Let me try to address some of those. First of all, with respect to ownership, I've been a little baffled reading some of the statements I've read in the paper. The hospital is owned by Sutter Health. Sutter Health is the sole corporate member of the hospital. So let's just set that straight right now. There is a local governing board, and they do drive the decisions, the operating decisions of the organization, but it is owned by Sutter Health. It is a nonprofit hospital. A not-for-profit hospital does not mean not for income. If we don't generate an income, we can't reinvest in our facilities. We can't put in a 128-slice CT. We can't purchase a $23 million electronic health record. So the fact that we are generating a profit in a not-for-profit system is not unusual. In fact, it is expected, and it is really required in order to sustain our operations. With respect to the two physicians you mentioned, neither one of them were driven out of the community by Sutter Health. Let me just assure you that I would not be so punitive. There were reasons why they left that are beyond my control. I don't really know what those reasons are. I can assure you, however, that before an unsolicited phone call was received by me from a urologist who is retiring from full-time practice in Grants Pass and expressed an interest in coming here to practice on a part-time basis for a couple of years before his wife retired, we were already receiving requests for information from hospitals outside of the state at which Dr. Davis was apparently interested in applying for privileges. So his decision to retire from this community, as far as I am concerned, was not driven by the fact that another urologist came in here on a very part-time basis, I might mention, and I would be happy to share with you the actual volumes of surgeries that that other urologist did. And certainly the volume of surgeries that surgeon is doing or has done could not possibly have been the contributing factor to a physician who'd been in the community for 20-plus years closing his practice. With respect to out-of-network providers, by law, a hospital cannot demand that its physician providers with which it has exclusive contracts, for instance, anesthesia, ER, radiology, cannot demand that they contract with every insurance company that the hospital contracts with. That is by law. We can encourage it. We can spell out in our contracts, as we do, that they will use their best efforts to negotiate in good faith with the insurers that the hospital has contracts with. I do not have with me currently today a list of the insurance companies that each one of our exclusive providers, whether it's the ER physicians, whether it's anesthesia, whether it's radiology, have with the various insurers. I could possibly secure that for you, but I don't have that information with me. With respect to our charges, I think that information is often hastily thrown around without little understanding of what goes into charges. I'm happy to provide to you, if I may. This is statewide data. This comes from OSHPD. This is 2014 data. That's the most current we have. This is showing Northern California hospitals and our adjusted average charge per discharge for acute services. And you will see there, you are absolutely correct, that Mad River's average charges are less than Sutter Coast hospitals. You will also see that St. Joseph Eureka is about double our charges. And that's not to say that they are worse or that they're better. What that is probably telling you is that they have a level of services that drive higher charges. If a hospital offers infusion, for instance, I can almost assure you that when we open an infusion center on campus, our average charge is going to go up because infusion drugs are extremely expensive, and they go into that factor. So yes, there are big differences in charges that hospitals provide, and you will even notice within Sutter, which are demarcated by the green line, that there are differences in our charge structures. That is something actually that our system is concerned about and is asking all the hospitals within the Sutter system to look at their own charge structures to try to be a little bit more consistent. But some of that is driven by services. If you offer a trauma service, for instance, and you're paying trauma surgeons to be on call 24/7, and they have to be dedicated to specifically trauma call, not to general call, there's a huge cost associated with that. So hospitals that have trauma center designation are typically going to have a higher charge structure. So there are a lot of factors that go into that, and I've again been reading things in the paper that it is complicated, but it indicates to me a lack of understanding. So I wanted to bring this in case that question did come up, and Supervisor Gitlin, I thank you for asking that.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard, have you got anything?
Sure. I'd like to back up real quick.
Sure.
To the comments specific to regionalization. I know there's been some movement within Sutter to kind of move back from the previous direction of your president, I think Pat Fry, and split Sutter into potentially two areas now, one which would be coastal and then one which would be in the Sierras, if I remember correctly. I know
Valley and Bay Area are the two designations.
Okay,
but
okay, that's what it
yes.
is. I know we kind of we're in our own ship up here. Is it still your intent, I know you just mentioned specifically to maintain the local governing boards, is it still your intent to maintain this local governing board?
So can I just share with you my opinion on the issue? Because
Sure.
Like many of you, when and I think I may have actually shared this with Supervisor Hemmingson not too long ago, when I moved from my prior position, which was at Memorial Medical Center in Modesto, where we had a local board, and I moved my position at Sutter Auburn Faith, the Sacramento Sierra region of Sutter Health was the first to integrate and the first to collapse the local boards and create a regional board. And I had serious misgivings about that structure. And of course, now I've been there, I'm dating myself, but I've been there in Auburn for 16 years. I've been here for a year and a half, it seems like yesterday. But in any case, personally, I think that is beneficial. I think it's beneficial to systemness. I think it's beneficial to the one Sutter culture that we are trying to develop, where every CEO at every hospital is not looking strictly at their operations, but they're really looking at what's to the benefit of the patients we serve throughout our communities, not just the community that my particular hospital's in. And I will share with you right now, it is challenging because we have operating unit directors over services such as imaging, pharmacy, therapy, that we, being the only acute care hospital that is not part of an operating unit, doesn't have the benefit of. Frankly, because I'm over Auburn and Coast, I still tap into those, but it's kind of a little bit of through the back door because they're not my folks for Sutter Coast. They're my folks for Auburn. I pay for them. They're part of that operating unit overhead that all the hospitals in that operating unit pay for. So for a hospital like ours, I honestly think that being part of an operating unit would be beneficial. We don't lose local control in the sense that we have local representatives on that operating unit board. In the case of many of our hospitals, for instance, Auburn and Sutter Auburn Faith and Sutter Roseville are in Placer County. We have a Placer County Community Advisory Board. So we have folks just like yourselves who sit on an advisory board and help us to make decisions in terms of services that we might want to offer, what our competition is doing, how we might better serve our communities, whether it's through community benefit avenues or through more clinically focused services. So I personally think that it would be beneficial if we didn't have a local board, but frankly, that's not a hill I'm ready to die on right now. I think that my focus right now is to grow the services that we need in this community. I'm not saying we're never going to do that, but that's a decision the board would have to make. That's not a decision that Mitch Hanna would be making.
Great. Thank you for addressing that.
Sure.
Yes, thanks, Mitch. I appreciate it, and thank you. You gave me a little tour of the new acute rehab section. Looks very nice, and I'm glad to see that you've got people in there now. It's looking good. Supervisor Howard addressed my concerns about regionalization, and you've talked to me about that before, and I appreciate you going over that again. But I've also had some people come to me and ask me about staffing levels, of where we were and where we are now for staffing levels at the hospital. And my understanding is those are reduced substantially, and I understand, sometimes the reasons for doing that are economic, and I'm just wanting to make sure that we're not staffing too low.
Sure. Well, we all want to make sure that we're not staffing too low. I will, as I think I may have shared with you previously, Supervisor Himminson. If you look, and this is national industry data, if you look at what we call FTEs per AOB, that's full-time equivalent employees per adjusted occupied bed, we are not anywhere near the 25th percentile, meaning the top performing 25th percent, 25% of the hospitals in the country. I will say that my predecessor, Linda Horn, and her team did an exceptional job of reducing what appeared to be, now this precedes me, but based upon looking at that FTE per AOB account, and again, services are a part of that too. What services you're offering will help to drive that, but they did an exceptional job of reducing the number of employees from what appears to have been a very fat organization at that time. I think we are close to right size now. I will share with you that with the implementation of the electronic health record, there are some positions that will go away. And there may be some positions that, because we have an electronic health record and access to information electronically, that would be transferred down to what we call S3, which is our support services division that operates out of Roseville and supports all the hospitals within the Sutter system. So there might be some more reductions, but on the other hand, I think with the growth of new services, we will also see more employees being brought onto the payroll.
Great, thank you. Anything else from supervisors?
If I could, I just want to take you down a little different road here.
Sure.
Acknowledging that it's a small community, a lot of well-intentioned people, some of us are elected. And the perception is that the buck stops here with the Board of Supervisors, and while we get our toes wet in every issue, it's not necessarily our decision to make on some of these issues, or we should be having the lead on it. We weighed in on the Sutter Coast issue several years ago and been consistent. But there's another elected body that is funded by tax dollars, run by elected officials. The specific charge is health care, which is the healthcare district, and I know there's some members here. So without chastising anybody or finding fault with anybody, but recognizing that partnerships are what drives the success of this community, I would encourage the hospital district or Sutter Coast to meet with on a regular basis, much the way you had this dialogue with us. Do it with the healthcare district. And I think working together, the community benefits.
I couldn't agree with, I couldn't agree more.
And
thank you.
Without finding fault, sometimes somebody has to make the first step.
Right.
Mitch, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will invite you back at a future date. I hope you would be happy to come. We'll see what happens.
I would welcome it.
We'll see what happens after public comment.
Thank you very much.
Is there any public comment on this issue? And I would just like to say that if you would please direct your comments to the board. If there are questions for Mr. Hanna, I may or may not ask him to come back up and address those.
Well, I can't stand up here and say everything I have to say without reading it.
It's okay.
So you're going to have to bear with me. My name is Dwayne Reichlin. I'm with the Delaware County Healthcare District, but these comments that I'm going to read to you are pretty much my own opinion based on the length of time I've been involved in this whole process, which has been about the last, well, when I came back on the board 4 years ago, I had just recently retired and was planning on retiring, and now I've been into healthcare issues up to my ears. Statement is my personal opinion basically, and really has not that much to do with the healthcare district, although the healthcare district will be mentioned in this. A little bit of my background: I am a native Del Norter, and upon returning from Vietnam in 1967, I landed a job with Hambro Forest Products, where I was employed for 43 years. 28 of those years as President, Chief Executive Officer, retiring in May of 2011. Over that 28-year period, I worked with, negotiated agreements, and competed against large corporations such as Weyerhaeuser, Georgia Pacific, LP, Sierra Pacific, Roseburg Forest Products, Home Depot, and many more. So I've got some corporate experience. While watching the January Del Norte Transportation Board meeting, I overheard Tamara Light and discussed with her board how she would need a plan to financially assist the almost 900 medical transfers and their families get back home after Sutter Coast Hospital sends them out of Del Norte County for treatment because we no longer have doctors or available beds to take care of them.
what is this all about? Sutter Health created this mess. It's not up to the Transportation Board or the taxpayers in this community to solve this problem. First thing I want to start with is by letting the Sutter Coast Hospital employees know that the issues I and most of this community have with Sutter Health are not about the great work they are doing managing the day-to-day Sutter Coast Hospital operations under very difficult circumstances. We're very proud of their service to this community. In the late 1980s, Sutter Health said that if the prison was built, they would build a hospital and it would be owned and managed by a local board. That happened, and until 2005, it worked very well. The big question is the hospital owned or not owned by Sutter Health? We have an agreement with Sutter Health and an issue that the healthcare district got involved with those guys. One of the comments in that agreement was that the hospital was owned by Sutter Health. We went back to our attorneys and they changed the language. There's no question Sutter Health is the sole member. That's not a question. They have decision making, but they do not own that hospital physically. And that argument can be made, and it's been verified by some local attorneys, and they would have not changed the language in the agreement if it wasn't true, I guarantee you. From the time that Sutter Health was built and until 2005, Sutter Coast Hospital transferred no more than 300 patients to other locations annually. Then came the changes in how Sutter Coast Hospital was to be operated. First, board members were asked to change the Sutter Coast Hospital corporate bylaws without really questioning why. Accounting was moved from Sutter Coast Hospital, merged into Sutter Health's Sacramento system. Then a couple of years later, it was proposed by Sutter Health that it now is necessary to not only go to critical access, but remove the control from the local board and transfer full ownership of Sutter Coast Hospital to the Sutter Bay West region. That's changed, and now it's divisions, I believe. That board would be controlled by a board in the Bay Area. The sad part is the majority of the local Sutter Coast Hospital board allowed themselves to be convinced by Sutter Health this was the way to go. And they were convinced by Sutter Health executives and Sutter Health legal counsel, and they voted to do that. Then came two local doctors, Dr. Caldwell and Dr. Duncan, who said, wait a minute, has anyone given any thought to what is going to happen to healthcare in this community if we just hand over ownership and complete control of our Sutter Coast Hospital to Sutter Health? So here we sit 10 years later. Sutter Coast Hospital has been reduced to a level of around 25 beds. Many doctors have left the community. The only serious physician recruitment going on for Sutter Coast Hospital is by Sutter Health to bring more foundation doctors in here to strengthen their assumed monopoly on this area. And presently, we're transporting almost 900 patients a year to other facilities all over California and Oregon. So in order to help keep local residents from going broke, paying for expensive plane trips and family expenses to remote locations, it now looks like we have to find more taxpayer money somewhere so we can help get patients and their families home after they have been treated and released somewhere else. As you know, over the last 4 years, Del Norte Healthcare District has been spending money on attorneys to slow Sutter Health's plans down. The Camden report was proved to be a farce. Recently Sutter Health officials announced that application for critical access has been put on hold for now. So it looks like the Del Norte Healthcare District efforts have had for now a positive impact on holding Sutter Health back. Let's not forget that Sutter Health is a powerhouse and can afford to have very expensive legal and public relation firms at their disposal. It looks like this community is going to may have to, over its, if we're going to have any control over its healthcare delivery in the future, we may have to hire legal and public relations professionals that operate at the same level that Sutter Health has the ability to operate at.
Dwayne, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, please. I'll let you go over.
Well, you gave Mr. Hanna.
Mr. Hanna had a presentation. This is public comment, and I've let you run probably twice as much time. I'm not trying to cut you off too much. I'll let you finish up, but if you just kind of get to it. We've heard a lot of this, and we'd like to get to what maybe your questions are or what your issues are.
Okay. Well, I have quite a few of those, but one of my goals has been to try and bring local business, nonprofits, and elected leaders together to show Sutter Health that this community is united in their belief that the community as a whole should have the chance to voice their opinion on the future healthcare delivery in this community. Sutter Health knows that as long as they can keep this community divided and from coming together as one, they will eventually achieve their goal of shoring up their perceived monopoly, convert to critical access, possibly down the road, and go to either regionalization or divisionalization. It's my opinion that in order to achieve their goal of keeping this community off balance, has been spending money making promises to local business and nonprofits that are always cash-strapped. In other words, Sutter Health is throwing a few gold nuggets out into the community in order to maintain control of the gold mine. I do not believe that's illegal. It's just one of the tactics used by Sutter Health to keep the community off balance. For most people, change is very difficult, and if you are promised a perceived sure thing, no matter how short-sighted it might be, it's very hard to take a chance on something you are not sure of. I'll finish up by saying, if Sutter Health believes they are providing the best possible care for this community at a reasonable cost, then they should not have any problem explaining to this community specifically what their long-term plan for this community is, and work with the Del Norte Healthcare District to put an advisory vote on the next ballot and let the residents of this community decide if they are satisfied with the service they are getting presently and will receive in the future at Sutter Coast Hospital. The Del Norte Healthcare District is an elected body that represents all of the people of Del Norte County. It will not be going anywhere anytime soon. I feel if Sutter Health is not willing to work with the Del Norte Healthcare District and be more transparent with community residents, the issues we now have will go on for a very long time. And I assure you, Sutter Health, no matter how much money you throw at this community to keep the community divided, unless we start working together, you will eventually lose the battle. Recently in a newspaper article, just about done. Recently in a newspaper article, I read Mr. Hanna's answers to several questions a triplicate asked him. He tactfully sidestepped most issues by suggesting the issues happened before he got here. Mr. Hanna is a well-paid Sutter Health corporate executive. His role in life is to protect and defend any decision that Sutter Health makes in Sacramento. He knows exactly what has happened in the past and what the long-term plan is for Sutter Coast Hospital, and I would suggest that we start working together to either sit down, put a deal together that we can all live with Sutter Health, or allow us to go out and look at some other possibilities that are out there. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it. Any other public comment?
Hi, Linda Sutter, 5th District. My understanding is in regards to the nonprofit shield that Sutter Coast has, they have welfare exempt. They're welfare exempt, meaning that they cannot have profitable businesses within the hospital. And one of the things that I looked at was the reference laboratory, which under Internal Code 512, they said if you're in a rural setting, you can have a reference laboratory. However, well, the question is, because they made that $10.8 million profit, that the question is the internal medicine laboratory competing with Sutter Coast Laboratory? Because if it is, then that would exempt them from their welfare exempt status. And or if their operational costs, they can make 10% profit off of from their operational costs, which means that Sutter Coast Hospital's operational costs would have had to exceed over $100 million when they made that $10.8 million profit. So when they have physical therapy, MRIs, CAT scan, and radiology business, as well as laboratory business, making profits at that hospital, my question is that how is it that they are welfare exempt? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Mr. Hanna, thank you very much. Dwayne, thanks for your comments. We are going to move on. We have an 11:15 timed item for discussion of future alternative fuels in the Northwest California region. You must be Juliet.
I am Juliet, and I'm thrilled to be here today.
Thank you.
Let me know when I can begin. Anytime
And you're ready to go.
We've got the slideshow up. Okay, great. Well, good morning to the board and to county staff and to the Del Norte community. My name is Juliette Bond, and I'm here today to present some information on the future of alternative fuels in Del Norte County. Is this my clicker here? Okay. This presentation is part of the final phase of the California Energy Commission funded project to develop an alternative fuels readiness plan for the North Coast California region. The North Coast California region includes Del Norte, Siskiyou, Trinity, Humboldt, and Mendocino counties. The purpose of the Alternative Fuels Readiness Plan is to develop a cohesive 5-county strategy to increase the diversity of fuels available in our region. The Readiness Plan will be available in the end of April, and it is to be used as a reference for cities and counties when developing new fueling infrastructure or promoting alternative fuels use. The report contains clearly identified actions to address the barriers that we identified through meeting with first responders, mechanics, fuel suppliers, and public and private fleet operators. The document also contains ideas for streamlined permitting for fueling infrastructure and language that can be added to support the alternative fuels use in the general plan and in zoning updates. This planning document will also help us to position our region to go after some federal and state fundings to install new fueling infrastructure. So, what are alternative fuels? Alternative fuels are typically defined as fuels other than gasoline and diesel. The benefits of alternative fuels include the potential to reduce fleet operating costs, sourcing domestically produced fuels for increased energy security, reducing criteria air pollutants in order to improve air quality and public health, and reducing our vulnerability to foreign fuel price volatility. The Readiness Plan looked at the role that each of these alternative fuels can play in reaching the targets for new fuels availability by the year 2020. It should be noted that the last 2 fuels seen on the slide here can be used in vehicles that produce 0 emissions from the tailpipe. So I thought it would be a good idea to quickly go over the advantages and disadvantages in each of the fuels considered in the Readiness Plan. Starting with biodiesel, this fuel is domestically produced from soy and vegetable oils and can be used in most newer diesel engines. Disadvantages of using this fuel include a lower fuel economy, increased fuel cost, and issues with the fuel gelling in colder temperatures and potential engine durability issues. Now, renewable diesel, on the other hand, is a newer fuel on the market, and you can think of it as second-generation diesel fuel. Like biodiesel, it is made domestically from soy, canola, and tallow. However, unlike biodiesel, it has no issues in cold temperatures and is identical to petroleum diesel in terms of performance and fuel economy. This is what we call a drop-in fuel because it also requires no new fueling infrastructure, nor does it require any modification to diesel engines. This fuel is becoming widely available as we speak. However, because it can replace petroleum diesel immediately, there is a concern that the demand for this fuel will quickly outpace supply. Now, it should be noted that all gasoline we currently buy in California is E10 or 10% ethanol. E15 or 15% ethanol is allowed for use in 2001 and later vehicle model years, and ethanol blends that are higher than 15% require the use of a flex fuel vehicle specifically tuned to run off of ethanol. The advantages of this fuel is that it is domestically produced from corn and soybeans and has a fuel cost that is comparable to gasoline. The main disadvantage of this fuel is that it has a lower energy content, and that results in a lower fuel economy for the vehicles that run off this fuel. Now, domestic natural gas production has increased significantly over the last few years, and it is now being used as a vehicle fuel, a lower cost vehicle fuel. However, the main disadvantage of this fuel is that it is not renewable and it is not available in all parts of our region. Similarly, propane fuel can be produced domestically, but it has the same disadvantage of not being renewable, and also because although it is widely available for home heating and cooking uses, it is not used much as a vehicle fuel, and there are very few vehicles on the market today that are designed to run off of LPG. Now, electric vehicles have the greatest advantages in terms of engine performance. The electric motor is about 3 times as efficient at converting energy into miles and does so without producing any tailpipe emissions. Using electricity as a vehicle fuel also presents the opportunity to produce the fuel in your home, at your home, or anywhere in our communities. And furthermore, if produced from renewable electricity, electric vehicles can achieve zero net emissions. Electric vehicles also have the lowest fuel costs, on average about $1.32 per gallon of gas equivalent. Current yet decreasing disadvantages include the limited driving range per charge and the time required to charge the batteries. It should be noted, however, that the electric vehicle market is rapidly expanding, and electric vehicle range is expected to pass 200 miles per charge in the next 2 years. The bottom line here is that you should all expect to see more electric vehicles and more EV charging stations in Del Norte County in the very near future. Finally, we come to a fuel that is still emerging on the market. Note that hydrogen is not a raw fuel itself. It must be produced from a raw material and uses energy to split off the hydrogen molecules. Currently, hydrogen is one of the most expensive fuels, and hydrogen fuel vehicles are still very expensive as well. However, hydrogen has a lot of promise as a vehicle fuel in that it also produces zero tailpipe emissions and can be produced anywhere using electricity to split water. The state of California is currently pushing to have 51 hydrogen fueling stations installed by the end of the year and 86 stations by the end of 2021. So, why should we care about increasing the use of alternative fuels in our region? The first reason is energy security. By diversifying our transportation fuels, we can begin to increase our use of domestically produced fuels and reduce dependence on foreign supplies. You can see here the California fuel supply data showing from 1982 shows that we're importing an increasing amount of fuel from foreign supplies. The second key reason to use alternative fuels is to reduce emissions from the transportation sector. This does not mean that we will stop driving or hauling goods in and out of our communities. It simply means that we will shift the fuels and vehicle technologies we use to accomplish these tasks. The transportation sector, as you can see here, is responsible for about 37% of the California greenhouse gas emissions. And at the county level, the percent of these emissions from transportation sector is oftentimes 50% or greater due to the fact that we have less industry and often need to drive longer distances for importing and exporting goods and services. Keep in mind that using alternative fuels will not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but most alternative fuels offer reductions in criteria air pollutants as well. So with the benefits of the alternative fuels in mind, the state of California, the California Energy Commission, and the Air Resources Board have been developing goals and policies related to increasing the use of fuels produced in California, reducing dependence on petroleum, and improving air quality. And to support these goals, the state has passed a number of laws and regulations. Now, I won't go through each point on this slide, but the main takeaway is that there are a lot of laws and regulations moving the transportation sector towards low and zero emissions fuels. One of the key standards that will have an impact on Del Norte County is a low carbon fuel standard, which requires fuel suppliers to reduce the carbon intensity of the California fuel mix by the year 2020. This will impact the fuels available locally and will open up opportunities to manufacture local low-carbon fuels and earn tradable credits that can be sold to the fuel suppliers. Another regulation that has a local impact is the California Building Code. In the 2016 update, all new buildings will be required to install electric vehicle charging stations depending on the number of parking spaces they have. This means that for all new local building projects, the permitting will require consideration of electric vehicle charging stations. There are also state requirements geared towards reductions in diesel emissions, requirements for the state to reduce its use of petroleum by 20%, and a requirement on vehicle manufacturers that stipulates that by the year 2025, 20% of all vehicles for sale in California will be zero emissions vehicles. That is right around the corner. And of course, it's not just happening in California. There have been federal policies since the 1970s that are driving this change. What we are seeing here is sustained momentum from the federal and state levels to increase the supply of domestically produced renewable fuels and the use of advanced vehicle technologies. So why should local governments care? Local governments have a lot to gain by encouraging and promoting the use of alternative fuels in their jurisdictions. Benefits of alternative fuels include increased energy security, compliance with state emission standards, and economic development in that new types of parts and equipment and maintenance will be needed to support alternative fuel vehicles and alternative fuels infrastructure. Municipal fleets can also benefit from using alternative fuels through reduced operating costs and reduced tailpipe emissions. So what can local governments do? First and foremost, they can include language supporting the development of and use of alternative fuels in annual goal setting and general plan updates. Secondly, local jurisdictions can add alternative fuel vehicles to their fleets and accelerate the retirement of older, less efficient engine technologies. And finally, local jurisdictions can elect to participate in the formation of a North State Clean Cities Coalition. A Clean Cities Coalition is a national network comprised of local public-private partnerships that include businesses, fuel providers, vehicle fleets, local government agencies, and community organizations. Clean Cities Coalitions develop and implement strategies to reduce petroleum use in their area. If the board is interested in learning more about the formation of the North State Clean Cities Coalition, which is just beginning to happen now at the end of our Alternative Fuels Readiness Plan, if you are interested in learning more, you can contact the Schatz Energy Research Center located in Humboldt County, and I've included a contact card along with the 2016 Clean Vehicle Buyer's Guide, which shows all of the alternative fuel vehicles available on the markets today, gives you specifications and costs. I've also included all of the California incentives available to our region in with a packet that you all have received. So if you'd like more information, please contact the Schatz Energy Research Center to get involved. The intent of this coalition is to collaboratively partner with public and private stakeholders in the North State region to focus specifically on diversifying our fuel supply and ensuring regional access to state and federal funds to assist in the development of alternative fuels infrastructure. Your voice in this coalition would be extremely valuable in shaping the transportation and fueling future of the North Coast California region. So with that, I want to thank you all for giving me the time to come here today and share with you the information that we've developed over the last 2 years, and I am available to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Juliet, thank you very much. Any questions from supervisors? David?
Not necessarily a question, but an invitation. Unintended consequences while you, we use alternate fuel sources, then we don't pay gas taxes. So
Right.
I know that the trend is going towards electric vehicles, but if you have not already thought about it, I would invite your coalition to participate in the pilot program for the road usage charge, because somebody's going to have to pay for these roads, and if you get ahead of the curve on what the impact is going to be on this fleet that does not pay for the roads, and address how they're going to pay for it in the future.
Sure.
Great.
Can I respond to that really quickly? The state of California, and I didn't list it here on the slide, but they have also formed a committee to look at an alternative tax to support the roads. Now that you're quite correct, as we shift to alternative fuels, we're not paying the gas tax that supports keeping our roads in good shape. So the state of California is actually already working on an alternative fuels tax.
And I guess I wasn't clear. I sit on that committee
Oh, you
that was established by the legislature.
right.
So I'm inviting you to be part of the pilot program.
Yes. Got
And
it.
as many of your coalition that can do it. Thanks.
Right, I got that. So another purpose of the coalition would be to be a part of that pilot program. Yeah, I appreciate that input. Are there any other questions?
Supervisor Gitlin.
Juliet, wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Very much. It takes a lot to get through this, and I'm trying to read through this as you're talking, and I'd like to invite you back in 6 months after we get a chance to vet this and give us an update. There are lots of consequences. I mean, you're talking to someone who gaps his own spark plugs, so I'm going to miss my car, but I know it's the cylinder engine is a thing of the past, and we're looking in our rearview mirror. This is the future. So perhaps you can schedule, and Chairman, we can invite Juliet back for an update after we get a chance to do this, and maybe we can take a position on this.
Yeah, that would be lovely. I really appreciate your consideration, and please do feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Supervisor Howard?
Yeah, very interesting discussion. Lots of debate around these topics going forward in the future, how it reflects regionally. There's a lot for us to consider. And, just thinking back about your presentation, more importantly, when you started discussing the biofuels, there's effects from taking these directions. And I work in the farming industry, and we saw the effect of an ethanol movement, and now potentially an effect with a soy crop. That directly affects prices farmers pay for their feeds. And sometimes those alternative fuels aren't so great, as we find out from those who You may run a chainsaw after you let it sit during the winter periods of time, or a weed eater or whatever. You find that ethanol is gumming up your carburetor, and that needs to be replaced. So there's these trade-offs, and we're seeing it locally with our dams. You know, electricity still has to be produced in some way, shape, or form. And it's going to be coal-fired, it's going to be diesel-fired, as we see down in Humboldt County. It could be water-powered, which is the cleanest way to do it, but we're advocating right now to remove dams along the Klamath River that would directly affect that energy uptake. So it's a huge, huge discussion, and I see the need to go cleaner. Gosh knows, we want that here for Del Norte County. It's the image we want to reflect, but there are trade-offs, there are balances, and maybe that could be part of our discussion if we choose as a region to enter this coalition.
Absolutely, and you know, you're quite correct. There are a lot of different trade-offs, and I think that's why it's important that we as a region that is often overlooked. I will say, kind of as background, Clean Cities coalitions have existed since the 90s, and they're mainly in the big cities. Now we're looking at, well, what are the more rural communities, what are our different needs, and what are our approaches to alternative fuels going to look like? And instead of sort of letting things happen to us, we have decided to take a more proactive approach of getting together to really take into consideration these trade-offs that you mentioned and look for the best pathways, clean fuel pathways that we have available to us. So I appreciate your comments, and I hope that you all are at least intrigued and inspired to take a place at the table.
Juliet, thank you. I did have one question on your presentation, and I was unaware that there was a biodiesel and a renewable diesel, so thank you for explaining that. But there's also a renewable natural gas?
Yes, there is. Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. Unfortunately, that fuel did, maybe you want to finish your thought, sorry.
No, that was, I just wasn't aware that there was a renewable natural gas, but you didn't have an explanation in your presentation, and I was curious.
I did. It did not make it as one of the fuels analyzed in the plans, but it is actually a fuel that's near and dear to my heart. In my side life, my other hat is someone who wishes very much to develop anaerobic digesters and produce a renewable natural gas vehicle fuel. What's wonderful about that is we can do that very locally, very distributed, using our wasted organic resources. So that is an emerging fuel. It's somewhat niche in the sense that there's only so much manure and food waste and things available to make that fuel, but I think that we're going to see communities recognizing that opportunity and making that a part of the overall portfolio. So
that's a methane?
Yep, okay. Methane. So it's just like compressed natural gas, only it comes from plants and manure.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, we're going to get back to our stuff. We're going to take up the consent agenda, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any public comment on consent agenda items only? Okay, seeing no public comment, then Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes. And within that consent agenda are a couple of proclamations. I have one on Tsunami Safe. This is a proclamation of the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors proclaiming March 19th through the 25th as Tsunami Safe Days 2016's Know Your Zone. Whereas Del Norte County has been impacted by numerous tsunamis which have caused death and destruction and continue to place our residents in great peril, and whereas Tsunami Safe Days over the last few years since its creation has been instrumental in bringing emergency preparedness to the forefront for community awareness and education, and whereas education and awareness are fundamental to saving lives in a tsunami event, and whereas Tsunami Safe Days will bring numerous activities that will support the education and awareness to the visitors of our community, and whereas the community will test the new Del Norte Emergency Alert System as a way to notify our residents in a timely manner of an imminent disaster for our community, and whereas the State of California, the National Weather Service, and the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte will be testing their ability to issue a tsunami warning for Del Norte County via the Emergency Alert System on Wednesday, March 23rd between 11 and 12 noon, and now therefore be it resolved, the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims March 19th, 2015, or excuse me, March 19th through 25th, 2016 as Tsunami Safe Days in Del Norte County. Approved and adopted this 8th day of March 2016. Cindy.
Thank you. We have a very exciting week coming up, and I just want you guys all to know that we have a lot of different things happening on the 19th down at the harbor. We're actually going to do a lot of different activities that are going to help the crabbing situation. We're hoping to do a lot of live music, and thank you so much. Live music, we have a lot of education happening. We'll just have people signing up for the emergency alert system. On the 20th, we'll have a tsunami fun run. We'll be dodging obstacles and running from the tsunami zone. And on Wednesday, we have all the 8th graders coming in and visiting all the kiosks in downtown Crescent City. We're trying to make that an educational thing that happens every year for our 8th graders. And then we will be testing the live code emergency alert system for the first time in Del Norte County. So if you've not signed up, I feel like a broken record, but sign up today. We're over 8,000. We have 20,000 left to go. So not only will Civil Air Patrol be flying over and your emergency alerts will go across your TV, but you will get an alert if you've asked for your home phone to be called, or your cell phone, or a text. You will get that on the 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there was another proclamation, Professional Social Worker Month. Supervisor Gitlin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this is a Professional Social Worker Month for March 2016. Whereas for the past 100 years, social workers have helped America's leaders weave the nation's social safety net, it is not surprising that social work is currently one of the fastest growing professions in the United States, with social workers employed by many different organizations and industries, including private and public agencies, hospices and hospitals, schools and universities, businesses and foundations, military branches and veteran centers, as well as national and public elected offices. And whereas, and every day social workers address the emotional, psychological, economic, and or physical needs of millions of people, and whereas the social work profession creates pathways to full participation in society, and the primary mission of a social worker is to enhance human well-being and help the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable, and whereas social workers celebrate the courage, strength, and determination of the human spirit while working to empower others to hope, dream, and believe in their own potential so that their families can be reunited and elders and other dependent adults can be self-sufficient. And whereas in Del Norte County, social workers help the parents with an average of 150 children each month and 15 adult and or dependent adults to use their strengths, resilience, and self-advocacy to navigate life's challenges, and also help them function better in their environments, improve their relationships with others, and solve personal and family problems through a wide range of psychological services. Now, therefore, it be resolved, the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaim the month of March 2016 as Professional Social Worker Month in recognition of social workers and their commitment and dedication to the individuals, families, and community of Del Norte, and call upon all citizens in the observance and support of social workers passed this and adopted this 8th day of March 2016.
I would like to say a special thank you to the social workers that we have in our child welfare, adult protective services, and the mental health social workers that we do not have here, but they do a tremendous job in helping all of our children and families throughout the year. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. That's it? Okay. Any comments from board members? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 17. Mr. Hooper, we're going to be talking about our groundwater sustainability plans.
Yep. So as the board, excuse me, as the board knows, the state passed sweeping legislation in 2014. This was known as the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, which provides for a new framework to regulate the state's groundwater resources. Excuse me. SGMA has been codified in the California Water Code, and rules are now being developed by the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Commission to implement its various provisions. While groundwater management is truly a critical matter throughout much of the state, particularly in some of the more problematic basins, the new rules being developed to implement SGMA include provisions which are concerning from the perspective of Del Norte County. Specifically, last month, DWR released draft regulations which spell out the process to develop and approve local groundwater sustainability plans, or GSPs. As we all know, Del Norte County is a unique region climatically relative to the rest of the state, and we also know that the one-size-fits-all approach rarely works in our favor when it comes to state mandates. SGMA does, however, include a key provision which allows for an alternative approach to demonstrate sustainability and to comply with SGMA. Essentially what this section of the Water Code allows for is a local agency to avoid the requirements to develop the full GSP by providing a report from a licensed professional that demonstrates that the basin has been operated in a sustainable manner over a 10-year period. And this is found in the section 10733.6 of the Water Code. The issue now is that the draft guidelines released by the Department of Water Resources, which would actually implement the GSP alternative option, deviates significantly from the Water Code itself. This is concerning to staff in that it would essentially make it more challenging for the county to demonstrate that we should qualify for that alternative option. This issue was discussed at the Natural Resources Goal Committee last month. There was direction given to staff to prepare a letter which points out these deviations and inconsistencies with the statute. And so what you have before you is a recommended comment letter, now that we're in the comment period for the rulemaking process, which would go to the Department of Water Resources expressing our position. And actually, if you read the letter suggesting alternative language, which we as staff feel is more consistent with the Water Code and SGMA itself.
Perfect. Thank you. Any comments or questions, board members?
Randy, I have a question, and I'm just wondering, are you, okay, the Water Resources is not in concert with the current Water Code. Is that in Del Norte County? Is that what I'm hearing you say? We're looking for an exemption on this letter? Is that what the comments will say?
So under the Water Code and under SGMA, there's basically a mandate to either develop a GSP, which is the traditional option, the option that DWR is kind of pushing local agencies to get into because it makes the process more uniform. However, again, if you look at the legislative intent of SGMA, it did provide for an alternative option, and that was actually codified in the Water Code itself. And what we now have are the draft rules being proposed by the Department of Water Resources to implement SGMA. So whenever this type of legislation happens, it gets codified, and then the implementing agencies, which in this case would be the Department of Water Resources, has to develop protocols and rules to implement that. And if you look at the rules, that's the issue that we have, is under that alternative option, they've changed the language of SGMA, they've deviated from the language of SGMA, which is going to make it more difficult for us to prove that we're eligible for that alternative option.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Supervisor Howard.
This is terrific, Mr. Hooper. You've done a great job running point on this. As you're aware, and as we've expressed several times in our Resource Advisory Goals Committee, this has been a frustrating process for us for the last year. We shouldn't be in this boat. We just should not be here. The State Department of Water Resources has basically utilized faulty information to categorize this basin as medium priority. That puts us into this option to develop a groundwater sustainability plan. We shouldn't be even considering at this point an option for a groundwater sustainability plan, not even an alternative approach, because we know from DWR's own data since 1974, we are sustainable in our basin. And it's frustrating to continue rolling down this path. It's frustrating that now this board has to create a resolution or a letter to the Department of Water Resources saying, hey, guys, you went outside your legislative bounds. You are now asking the county to do something that wasn't even the legislative intent. I'm glad we're going to get together with the Department of Water Resources this Friday and discuss those various options that placed us into that medium category, but I've just got to say publicly, I am frustrated that we are even at this point in this process.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, Thanks, Randy. Any public comment?
I'm encouraged to hear that there might be an alternative.
You're not going to read that, are you?
Oh, no. Because up until this point, what Department of Water Resources is telling us, and I understand everyone in the state of California has to be treated equally poorly.
Rob, would you identify yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. Rob Miller, Delaware County Farm Bureau. Because there are certain parts of the state that absolutely have an issue. But as we know, having well over 60 inches of rain already this year, that we get full recharge of groundwater in this part of the world, as a couple of other counties do in certain locations. Part of this thing has all been based upon a state water resources land use survey, which they state in their information was done in 2012. This is a land use survey that was done in 2012 that has been like impossible even to open. What was sent from McGuire's office to us, Farm Bureau, and what was sent by Randy, who came from the Department of Water Resources, they evidently don't want us to know, because you can see much of this are just blank pages. I had to get a U.S. government employee to print it because nobody in the private sector has the proper programs even to print what they send. So it's really interesting that now there may be an alternative. Because, as Chris said, it's just plain crazy in this part of the world. Thank you.
Wow. So all that documentation, I thought we were really going to get something. Any other public comment?
Is this where I can get up and finish reading mine?
We would appreciate it if you would stay on the topic of what we've got going. You know, it's, you know, the one size fits all in California. You know, we say over and over and over that this doesn't work, and it does not work. And, you know, we have to be careful. You know, we have to be careful with unintended consequences when we look into this stuff, when we're looking for exemptions, or we're looking for alternatives, or we're looking for this or that. And the thing that reminds me of that is that we have actually declared an emergency. We've declared that we've been in droughts. Well, how can you be in a drought and have a sustainable basin? And so this thing kind of goes around and around, and we know that droughts, the so-called droughts, don't affect us like they affect other counties. We are very water friendly, I guess, whatever you want to say. We don't have a real issue with water. We continue to replenish, as Rob stated. So I just have a problem with unintended consequences. I believe this is the proper direction to go. I think we're making great progress because Randy has been at the forefront of this and doing a great job. So real happy with our direction.
Do we need a motion, Chair?
You know, just real briefly, I think part of the solution is in what happened in the past, like we did with AB 885. The state comes down with something, it got finally with pressure delegated to the regional boards where you do have some clout, and use the same tactic, I think would be fine. Like the letter, move to approve and send it.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes. Okay, we're going to take up the budget transfers quickly, I hope.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve budget transfer item 03-01 in the amount of $12,709 and budget transfer item 03-02 in the amount of $199,676.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on these budget transfers? Seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board.
No,
David,
just
you
quick
got
question. I'm glad to see that it reaches all 5 of the desired outcomes, but on budget transfer regarding the $199,676, I just want to understand what's there because there really isn't enough information for me if I was a layperson, that you're transferring from SB 163 to social services to offset mid-year children's services costs and increased building expenses. Are we taking money out of children's services and put it into lease agreements? Or are we moving from mental health to social services, or what are we doing?
We are moving from SB 163 is the wraparound funding. So we're moving some of that funding, which is realigned money, to cover the costs of the new building in Washington. And we also have some other costs in IHSS because we didn't get all of the MOE money from the general fund.
So it is moving children's services money into rent?
Partially to cover the costs, yes, for the Washington building and other shortfalls that were not realized by money from the state coming in, IHSS money not being realized.
So this is why I'm glad we're doing a children's budget. Now we're going to have some accountability coming in the next budget year.
And do we have that children's budget?
Not before us today, but yes.
Okay, no public comment on the budget transfers. Bring it back to the board. Any other comments or questions? Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 18. We're evidently going to submit a grant application. Randy?
So on to something more fun, hopefully, with this one. I'm sure we can all recall in 2014, the board took steps to designate several county roads as rural recreational roads. This would allow for the operation of OHVs, and we did this pursuant to Division 16.5 of the California Vehicle Code. By establishing these legal OHV opportunities in the county, the board enabled staff to pursue funding opportunities under the State Off-Highway Vehicle Trust Fund. Prior to doing so, the county was not eligible for these green sticker funds. Recently, the board has taken action to remove French Hill Road and Big Flat Road from the inventory of OHV routes, and this was due to an easement discrepancy whenever the roads were granted from the Federal Highways Administration to the county. However, we do still have Low Divide Road, Gasky Toll Road, Patrick Creek Road, and Holiday Mine Road open and available to OHVs on those unpaved portions. And so we remain eligible to pursue the green sticker funds. Last year, we were successful in securing a little over $55,000 in the green sticker funds under a planning grant. And we've, over the past year, been using those funds to develop an OHV plan, which would expand and hopefully enhance the county's OHV opportunities. I'm expecting that plan to be finished later this year, hopefully in the late fall, early winter. However, in the meantime, we have developed a project that we believe will improve our existing OHV areas by placing directional and route signage on these OHV routes. In establishing the county's OHV program, we have emphasized and placed a premium on promoting responsible motorized recreational opportunities in Del Norte County, and we feel that placing these signs is a critical component to furthering that goal. The cost of this project is estimated to be approximately $60,000, of which $35,000 is requested under the grant. However, the county's match portion would consist of project development and grant management, with the majority of the match consisting of road division staff time in installing the signs. To be clear, there is no cash proposed as part of the match, and the road division staff time will come from the regularly budgeted maintenance duties in these areas. Staff has developed a preliminary application. The final applications will be due on May 2nd, and if we're successful with this grant, we would hope that we would hope to hear that we've been awarded around June 6th.
Great, thanks, Randy. Yep. Any questions? Roger.
Randy, I just want to clarify, 60,000, the impact is not in monetary impact on the general fund or the road fund, which is about 35,000, so it'll be taken out in what, in labor and...
Well, indirectly there would be an impact.
Roads Department?
Indirectly there would be an impact to the road fund. However, the road fund would be using regularly scheduled maintenance obligations that the road department would be doing already.
So no impact to the general fund on this per se?
Yeah, that's fair.
Move to approve the submission for the 2 projects using the Title II RAC funds.
Second.
No, not using the RAC funds.
No, this is direction to submit the grant application.
This is green sticker.
For the application, yes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, bring it back to the board. Any further comments or questions? Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes. Okay, item number 19. Now we're getting into some rack stuff.
Here we are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Recently, the Del Norte Resource Advisory Committee made a request for proposals for funding, or for, yes, funding under the Title II, which is, I get the acronym incorrect here, the Secure Rural Schools and Self-Determination Act. We have successfully received funding for 3 projects earlier this year. For 2 culvert replacements on Big Flat Road and a culvert replacement on Patrick Creek. As part of this recent proposal request, we've identified 2 new projects. One is located on Holiday Mine Road, and the second is located on Rowdy Creek Road. The former project would be, we're requesting complete funding by the RAC in the total of $54,100. And for the Rowdy Creek project, we are requesting funding for the materials only and the NEPA, which would be $16,000. And if you have any technical questions about the applications, our road superintendent, Jeff Daniels, is in the audience.
Okay, thanks.
Well, to have it misconstrued that I was trying to move you along, but I would now make the motion for submission of the 2 projects using the RAC funds.
All right.
And I would second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Anything else? Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes. Okay, moving on to probation. Organizational structure responsibilities, department directive, emergency plan management. Lonnie.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It is afternoon.
These are several more policies that we've gotten through the process for approval from County Council. The union has had a chance to review these. We've met several times. For the most part, they're, as you can see, administrative. In my agenda request, I noted that search and seizure is probably the most exciting, but even that is a standard boilerplate policy for California as well.
Cool, thank you.
Move to approve the following policies as presented by the Chief Probation Officer.
Thank you.
Second.
And I have a second. And any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to the board. Any other comments, questions? Kylie, poll the vote, please.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes. Okay, I put an item on the agenda concerning last chance grade, and I was just hopeful that if we had any new discussions, any new things going on, that we would be able to discuss those so that we continue to be proactive in looking at the last chance grade. We know that it's vital to the community, so it's just a discussion request. So if anybody has anything new or would like to speak on anything about last chance grade, I'd love to hear it. Supervisor Howard.
Since I requested this to be a standing agenda item, it was more specifically to address community concerns that this Board of Supervisors is doing nothing. And I continue to hear these comments in public that we are doing nothing. And that is an absolute myth. This board has placed somebody on Jared Huffman's committee to look into this, and more importantly, stay on point to make sure the process is driven home. We have groups within this community are driving the point home, going out to businesses, going out to high elected officials in this community to make sure that the point is directed home, not only to Caltrans, not only to our legislative representatives, but also to various groups here to say, we need this road replaced. But by having this as a standing agenda item, it is my sincere hope that this community will recognize that this board is doing everything they can to make sure that federal highways and Caltrans and our legislative representatives, both at state and federal level, are trying to get this thing pushed forward in a extreme timely manner. Gosh knows, the business that I'm involved with on a daily basis, if this thing fails, is going to go. There's nobody in this room, well, it's probably everybody in this room, that agrees that they're going to be affected by this in some way, shape, or form. We will continue to support the process. So my hope, by having this as a standing agenda item, it would give Supervisor Finnegan additional time to comment if time was needed on where we're at in the process.
Thank you. Supervisor Gitlin?
I have a high degree of esteem and recognition for the Stakeholders Committee, which is wrestling with this troubling issue. I think it's unacceptable that Del Norte County sits still to accept the replacement road for last chance grade sometime between the years 2031 and 39. No reasonable individual, whether it be an expert geologist, engineer, to just anybody driving up and down last chance grade, believes that road will endure for, at a very minimum, 15 years. Our last chance grade advisory committee, consisting of our chairman, Kurt Stremberg, and former supervisor Chuck Blackburn, plus scores of individuals, companies, governances, we will work tirelessly to accelerate this announced timetable and expeditiously study, select, find financing, and build last chance grade bypass road. And I'm hoping that goal is in the next 5 years. I hope our board will get on board with this and support this goal, however challenging it is. And I hope those comments will be registered at our upcoming Caltrans Last Chance Grade Town Hall, which will be Wednesday here at the Fairgrounds, March 23rd, and in Klamath, March 24th. I think it's 5:30 at the Fairgrounds and 3:30. Yes, the reality is possible, but as I read in the paper, yes, we can. We have to work together to make this happen sooner than the timetable that was in the white paper, 2031 to 2039. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Finnegan.
Quote unquote, we have to work together. Thank you for that. There is a town hall meeting. There's 3 of them. It does me no good to continue to state the facts when people refuse to listen and have their own agendas. So we will continue with the process. It will take an act of Congress. As I stated before, there's 2 parallel tracks. I am chair of LTCO, who's been dealing with this for probably 12 to 15 years. I am on the stakeholders meeting, as is, I don't see him here now, Kurt Stremberg, who unfortunately there were some ground rules that some people don't want to adhere to, but that was formed because it was identified that that's probably where the $600 million to $1 billion would come from. Supervisor Hemmingson sits on the deal committee that meets, and I believe will meet another couple of weeks tomorrow, with Caltrans, with labor unions, with environmental groups, with Highway Patrol, to talk about issues such as last chance. And there's a lot of good work that's being going, that is happening in a timely manner. The 2 tracks, one going around, the other one, the highway's going to stay open. That is the charge of Caltrans. If you don't believe me, take a look at what they did at Devil's Slide. Take a look at what they're doing at Highway 299. Take a look at what they do at Highway 199. So I agree. Let's all work together, but let's leave our political rhetoric, innuendos, and untruths or suppositions at the door.
Thank you. I would just like to piggyback on what Supervisor Howard said about you know, the public perception that that the board is not doing anything. And every meeting that I go to, I met with Senator McGuire, and the first thing I ask him about is last chance grade, or mention about is last chance grade. When I go to a North Deal meeting, I mention last chance grade. So these discussions are going on continuously. When I go to the North Deal meeting, staff is there from both the Congressman Huffman's office and Senator McGuire's and Assembly Member Wood. All of these people are there. The discussion continues to go on. It is at the forefront. It is on our minds every time we meet with any of these people. So it may not appear as though things are happening because we're not in front of an audience all the time, but trust me, things are happening. Any public comment? Yes, Chuck?
I'm going to read this because I don't want to take up too much time, which...
Well, I hope, yeah. I hope you're going to stay with current, you know, don't go backwards.
I have facts and figures that I think this board needs to hear.
We appreciate
the amount of years that I've spent on this project. Last chance grade. In early March of 1972, a couple were headed back to Crescent City after dropping off their son to college down south. As the car approached Last Chance, the road disappeared with the car down the 100-foot abyss into the ocean. My friend and partner, Last Chance Grade Bypass Committee, lost his parents, that being Kurt Stremberg, and Kurt had to take off for business, I'm sorry. In the 42 years since then, there have been other abysses to the ocean, to the extent that we have lost at least 50 feet laterally into the ocean. One would think that a bypass should have been a focus then to now. 49 million spent in those years to try to band-aid a hemorrhage, and I just want to say they've spent 11 million on the new wall, and I talked to two of the workers that built that wall up at the bridge project in Southwark now, and they told me that when we were building the wall, because of the nature of that mountain, they knew it would fail, and it is failing. Now is the time to act in emergency mode, no 5 to 8 year studies, no bureaucratic delays that show a 23-year timetable of completion of a bypass. The shortest, quickest route starts 1 mile north of Wilson Creek Bridge at Rudisill Road, where it angles behind the mountain and ties into the curve south of Damnation Creek Trail. It only has to cross 3 acres of redwoods. The actual distance from Rudisill Road to the curve is about 2¼ miles. The cost they've shown for the total distance from the bridge to the curve is 220, 250 million. That's the least cost that they show. How do we successfully pull this off? In our small group discussions that we've had for 3 years, our legal guru, and I don't want to name the name, says that we can use the ministerial rights as a mechanism to plod forward through the bureaucratic maze. Ministerial right is for the good of the community, and maybe county council can look into that term and see what kind of a situation he comes up with. But that's what we are being told. And if that's true, this trumps or should trump bureaucratic red tape. My message comes from many years of involvement and study of the dynamics of Last Chance. My points are fact and study driven, and thanks to my partners for the last 3 years, Supervisor Roger Gittman, my good friend Kurt Strenberg that left before me, and I know this is a tough situation. It's a tough situation for this board and the city council and all the folks. But I think through a massive effort on our part, your part, the community's part, in pulling together Curry County, I've been in contact for 3 weeks with about 30 to 50 different businesses from here all the way down through Humboldt County. Rex Bone, my good friend on the board there, is working closely with me on this. And I think that all of us working together, we can find a solution to this thing and get it moving properly. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Any other public comment?
Steve Perez, IUG. Yeah, I think one of the advantages of coming to these as regularly as you can is really beneficial. I agree, there is a lot that is happening with this. I'm just wondering though, I don't know that, but does the county have a public information officer? And is it possible that maybe someone could be designated the responsibility of creating some sort of media thrust that highlights on a continuing basis what's going on with Last Chance Great, to get it out to everybody, whether it's through the paper or maybe even some sort of YouTube presentation where the County Board of Supervisors are interviewed and other people that are involved in it, the different stakeholders groups, and just give people an update, a reference point where they can go to and just get some good basic information as to what's going on, and give them a chance to really see what their supervisors are doing. I mean, that's one of the reasons, I came here with one purpose originally, but I've just found this absolutely amazing. I think it's something that builds confidence. And I just encourage you to think about what you could do media-wise to get the word out to everybody, because it is a good effort that's being put out. And sometimes, guys, you just got to toot your horn a little bit more. So.
Thanks, Steve. Any other public comment? Okay, I'm going to close, or we're going to move on to the next. Actually, we're going to move on. Let's move on to item number 24. I think that this has to...
How would you like me to say move to approve?
That'd be good. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, then I'll bring it back to the board. Any discussion?
Just to let everybody know, it's to authorize the chair to sign the letter supporting the governor's proposal to include $250 million in the 2016-2017 state budget for jail construction.
Which is something that we desperately need in our county. So hopefully some of those funds will trickle down to us. And the sheriff, I think, has an application in, or is putting an application in, so we're very supportive of that.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to recognize the sheriff's letter in that. Is that letter going to be a separate standalone letter, or is this going to be the letter that we're sending out?
The letter that we've got is ours, and I think he's got a letter that he's probably sending out, or I think he's got a sample letter that he sent out.
Sheriff, could you come up and just clarify this? Are you asking this to be on Board of Supervisors letterhead, your request?
Could I clarify something before the sheriff gets up? The letter that's on there came to us and was placed on there before the one that was sent out yesterday by the sheriff. So if the sheriff chooses to send one on his own, this one is actually meant from the Board of Supervisors. Wouldn't hurt to have them both go.
Thank you. I'm more interested in a letter from the Board of Supervisors. I'm trying to collect letters of support just from partnerships within the community. As this is in its infancy, that's what's been asked of interested agencies. And we are a very interested agency.
Yep. Any questions of the sheriff? Or?
No, just as a little background, I think what we're urging is that Del Norte County now be eligible to apply, whereas in the past, some of those funds were streamlined to some other counties that Del Norte was not at the top of the heap. Knowing some of the people that are making these decisions on behalf of counties, once the application is in, it was frustrating to see that we couldn't even be considered. So that's the key. Once considered, we can talk to some of our friends and make sure that they look at it twice as hard.
That's absolutely correct. This is the first part that's been asked, is to develop those letters. From what I understand, there's 20 counties in the state of California that are eligible for this money. And what makes this funding unique is that it's general budget money. It's not bonded like some of the last measures that have went through. So I think that we have a great opportunity to be extremely competitive for some of this.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from board members? Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes. Okay, let's move up to item number 23. We've got some appropriation request letters. Jay?
These are annual appropriation letters. They do come through typically Van Scoik and Associates for programs that the individual legislators that are listed on this have some say and hopefully some pull in, and we reach out on an annual basis to get their support.
Okay. Any questions from board members? Motion?
Move to approve and authorize the chair to sign and send them.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on the appropriation request letters? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Any other comments or questions?
I want to tell you what a great job that Van Scoik is doing for us back in D.C., as well as our partners in Sacramento.
Yep, doing a good job. Patty, pull the vote, please.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson?
Yes. Okay, miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the county.
One of the miscellaneous budget items that doesn't require the board to act on is there will be some legislation forwarded, and I believe Senator McGuire is one of those supporting it regarding PILT. RCRC is the sponsor or the advocate behind that, and they're looking to change the language that the governor changed last year from being a potential funding to a mandatory funding. So we'll see how that plays out. As far as the budget, I had explained to the board that I would have the mid-year to you at this meeting to discuss. I will tell you that from meeting with the budget team, we will not come forward with recommendations on any significant changes on the general fund side of any of those departments. But what I'm waiting for is the data on the children's budget. The recreation department has the numbers together. The juvenile side of probation has it together, and we're waiting for what's coming, which is the significant part through Health and Human Services. Once I get that in any narrative, then I can write that into the report, and I'll present that to the board. At this point, though, the general fund is pretty much on point in regards to the budget. We do have some issues that have caused either a hole or actually, in the case of community development, they're up on their revenue. So we'll point that out.
Okay. Anybody, anything else, David?
The only thing I would ask, Jay, is going forward with the children's budget, perhaps if we could schedule a meeting with the Safe and Healthy Family Children's Committee to vet it, to make sure all the partners have weighed in, and it would be great. And the only other thing I have is on the secure rural schools. I know we touched on it on the last item. It has expired, and unfortunately, the National Forest County Schools Coalition Board of Directors, while we did some work in D.C., and I'm going to be working with Paul Smith at RCRC to see what we can do to leverage not only that group, but Western Interstate Region Group. It is not looking very healthy or promising for this year. I mean, if you look at what's going on with the national election, with the lack of any bipartisan support on anything, from Supreme Court justice down to budget matters, it is going to be darn near impossible, which means that there will be a huge void this year in our road fund as well as in our schools. So just keeping an eye on that. It is not pretty.
Yeah, one of the advantages of having Greg in Washington, D.C. is to have him involved directly in any discussions back there also, and to point out, in this case, some of the obvious, but also to be able to talk to staffers to see what the advantage might be and who to talk to at what time as a potential reauthorization could come forward. But yeah, anytime you have a presidential election, you have, you have a very messy situation because people are, jockeying. So we'll see how that goes. We obviously don't want to lose any funding for our road department. They're limited as it is.
Anybody got anything else? Just a note on the agenda, next meeting will be a letter. Hopefully we'll approve a letter of mutual interest having to do with Forest Service projects that will be with the tribes, the Forest Service, environmental group EPIC, Smith River Alliance, the county. So some great partners trying to move projects forward in our forests so they don't continue to burn up. And with that, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.